Hi, I'm going to be looking at the poem Now Let No Charitable Hope by Elinor Wylie. This is a relatively short poem from the Cambridge GCSE anthology for your literature and English GCSE, and I think it's a pretty good poem to write on if you were to get it in the GCSE. So let's go through the first stanza. So as you can see, I have colour-coded the techniques first of all, and you are welcome to pause the video here and do the same. The reason that I've done this is to show how many different techniques there are throughout this particular poem and show how many language techniques and structural techniques you should be talking about in your GCSE essays. But of course, it's not enough to just identify techniques. You have to be analysing the deeper meaning and the potential effects that they have on the meaning of the poem, and of course on the reader as well, and our perception of the speaker. Okay, so the first stanza reads, "Now let no charitable hope confuse my mind with images of eagle and of antelope. I am by nature none of these." So this poem is seemingly quite abstract and confusing when you first read it, and there's lots of inverted syntax, which makes it a confusing first read. So let's break it down and look at the first line. Now let no charitable hope. So seemingly the poem begins almost in the middle of a conversation, and to some extent it puts the reader off guard. Now let no charitable hope confuse my mind with images. And that imperative here, now let no charitable hope, immediately gives the reader a sense that our speaker seems to be quite demanding with that imperative, now let, and perhaps directly commanding or demanding the reader. Now let no charitable hope confuse my mind with images. Okay, so we have the negative no here. So let no charitable hope. Now charitable hope suggests almost like someone pitying the speaker, giving hope, but it not being necessarily true. There's certainly a sense of pity going on in that word there. So if we were to rephrase this line, don't give me any pity or any false hope that might confuse my mind with images. So that verb there, confuse, suggests that the hope that the speaker might be given can confuse her. So if we're thinking about false hope, it might confuse my mind with images. And we have the words and the images, hope, mind, and images here, which begins the poem with the lexical field of hope and dreams and imagination. But our speaker is using the negative, so she doesn't want these imaginations. She doesn't want her mind to be confused. And just another point there, it's interesting that she uses the phrase in the possessive my mind. So it seems like our speaker is quite in control with the imperative and the possessive pronouns there. Now let no charitable hope confuse my mind with images of eagle and of antelope. Okay, so this image of the two animals again seems quite strange, and is quite abstract in it, and she gives no other explanation of what this might mean. So the eagle and the antelope, you might see the symbolism of those two animals as ones of freedom, and also kind of lacking restriction, but also they are predators. And so if she doesn't want her mind to be confused with images of eagles and of antelopes, perhaps she is saying here that she doesn't want hope or false hope to suggest that she is as free as an eagle or an antelope, or indeed as strong and powerful as an eagle or an antelope. So hope gives her that false sense of empowerment, perhaps, or the false sense that she can be free. And perhaps it's useful to know that she is obviously a woman writing in kind of early 20th century America, so would have been living with restrictions just due to her gender. So it confused my mind with images of eagle and of antelope. I am by nature none of these. Okay, so again, we have the declarative I am. So whilst our speaker is saying that she is not an eagle or an antelope or what they symbolize, we still have her language showing us she's quite powerful and in control with the declaratives. And they repeat later in the next stanza. I am by nature none of these. So in our speaker's nature, she is not, we've got the negative again, she is not whatever an eagle and an antelope symbolize. She is none of these. But there's also a certainty there, and perhaps finalise with that first end stop in the poem. There is a certainty that she knows what she is and she knows what she is not. And then we move to the second stanza. I was, being human, born alone. I am, being woman, hard beset. Okay, so we have these lines here mirroring each other. So that's an example of parallelism. And the first line begins in the past tense. I was, being human, born alone. Okay, so we have that negative image there of a human being born alone. And then it's repeated and it's emphasized with that second line. And when you're talking about these lines in your essays, it's good to combine them together and show how powerful they are as two lines. So I was being human, born alone. I am, so we move to that declarative, but we also get the repetition of I am, being woman, hard beset. Okay, so that suggests that she is both a human and a woman. So in all her being, in all the things that she attributes to being alive and a person, she was born alone and she is hard beset, and that suggests that she is kind of faced with struggles, hard struggles, and that's almost kind of forced upon her. And we can see also here, and where I've underlined in the pink, is that the sounds become a little bit more plosive here, so a little bit harsher, particularly compared to that first stanza where there's lots more O's being repeated in softer sounds. So I was being human, born alone. It becomes a little bit harsher. I am being woman, hard beset. And you can read that in different ways. You can read that perhaps as a more angry tone. You can read that as a more determined tone. I live by squeezing from a stone. Okay, so we the repetition here of these declaratives. I was, I am, I live. So almost in the past, and as she is now, and as she will live on, or as she does live. By squeezing from a stone. Now I think this is a really interesting metaphor. If she is squeezing from a stone, that metaphor suggests that, or the verb itself, squeezing, suggests that there's a lot of action. And if you're squeezing from a stone, that's obviously a pointless effort. So she's putting a lot of effort, a lot of strength, a lot of power, and she's not into things that perhaps don't give anything back. And so that really is kind of a hopeless metaphor given to us. I live by squeezing from a stone. What little nourishment I get. So the metaphor extends into that fourth line, and by squeezing from a stone, by trying to get things out of life that are hard and take a lot of time, she gets very, very little. So we have that adjective, she gets little nourishment from the things that she does. So that second stanza is much more negative and much more hopeless, in fact, and so it's almost an explanation of that first stanza. And then we move to the third and final stanza, where again we begin with quite an abstract image, quite an ambiguous image, and remember, it's fine to reference that and state that in your essays when things are confusing. In masks outrageous and austere, So in masks is an interesting and strange image. So perhaps that suggests that something is disguised if it's in a mask. And we don't yet know, because of the syntax, what she is talking about. But something that is in masks, something that's disguised, something that has been both outrageous, and that suggests something that is most likely negative, and austere, so something that is quite kind of strict and serious. And perhaps these two adjectives are actually somewhat opposing. The years go by in single file. So we finally get the subject in that second line. So she's talking about the years of her life that have gone by in single file, in masks, outrageous and austere. So is she talking about how kind of the years have gone by her that are somewhat disguised and she can't quite see them for what they are, and they've been both outrageous and they've been both austere? Or is she talking about the people in her life? It's not quite clear, and you want to kind of explore that, or perhaps you have a different interpretation too. And they go by in single file. So we have another interesting metaphor there, and that clearly shows that they've gone by kind of with strict order, which matches with austere, and suggests maybe kind of the monotony of her life as it's gone by in this ordered way, and relatively boring way as well. But then we get the third line beginning with but, which often signifies a pivot. So we're going from relatively negative meanings and negative tones, but perhaps that pivot there is telling us, the reader, that she is going to find something positive now. But none has merited my fear. Okay, so it seems that we change to a slightly more positive meaning here. And even though the years have gone by in single file, they have not justified, they have not merited her fear. And we're not, again, quite clear what her fear is here. And again, we have that possessive pronoun, which perhaps matches the previous use of my, and shows that she's still in control of her mind and her fear. So nothing in her life seems to have actually justified whatever her fear is, and none has quite escaped my smile. So again, we end in these final two lines in a much more positive and hopeful manner. So no year of her life has quite, not completely, but has quite escaped her smile. So we have another interesting metaphor there, that life has not been so terrible that she has not smiled, that it has not escaped her smile. So we end in a moment of hope and positivity, and that perhaps is showing us that our speaker actually, despite the things that she faces in life, she finds hope in the negative. And so that's just a broad outline of the initial perhaps meanings of the poem, but you might have a lot more to think about and a lot more to research and add to those interpretations. Once we've gone through a poem, it's good to then look back and think about the structure and think about where it matches particular points of analysis. You don't want to be talking about structure by itself. You want to integrate it into an important point of analysis. So clearly the structure is very regular. We have an A-B-A-B rhyme scheme. We have our regular 4-line stanzas. And so perhaps the best thing that matches, because it's very ordered, is the quotation here, by in single file. So in your essays, when you're writing on this poem, perhaps when you get to this quotation about her years going by in single life, you then want to include some structural analysis, that perhaps her life has been very ordered and regulated, and she uses the structure of the poem, this regular structure, relatively kind of plain structure, to symbolize the irregularity and perhaps monotony of her own life, the fact that she can't step out of maybe social expectations. And perhaps even that final line, "and none has quite escaped my smile," the fact that that's just the longest line in this poem, it almost breaks the structure slightly and the regularity of it. So her smiles and her happiness perhaps break the regular order of her life. And so we can look back now at the entire poem and think about what it actually means and what the final message is. And when you come to the end of your essay and to your conclusion, you want to come to your own personal opinion of what this poem is about. So you might look at the tone and how this poem should actually be read. Is our speaker determined to change? Is she accepting of her fate? Is she depressed? Is she desperate? And so different things that you can interpret and think about, and how our speaker is thinking and feeling. So personally, I think at the beginning, and definitely by that second stanza, there is a sense of kind of a real negativity, but there's something about the way that she uses her declaratives and her imperatives which suggests to me that this is quite a determined speaker who's fighting against whatever restrictions that she has in her life and whatever negative things that she has faced. And by the end, there is a sense of hope. So I think there is a sense that she is trying to break free, perhaps, or trying to find something positive in her life. Okay, so that is now Let No Charitable Hope. And one thing that you might want to now do is think about how you would answer different questions in the exam. So you might now think about how you would match your quotations together, how you would put together kind of 3 arguments that answer different questions. Our exam would like to ask things like, how does this poet explore the speaker's thoughts and feelings? How is this a moving poem? So see if you can now come up with 3 different ways or 3 different arguments that explore the speaker's thoughts and feelings and creates an essay that pretty much ticks off the majority of the quotations in this, or the best language techniques and structural techniques in this poem, as it is a short one and you should be able to write on the majority of it. Thank you.